ייעוץ ביוגרפיה.
She took the indie film world by storm by the age of 12.
She had this freshness and this exuberance about her.
It became like my passion. You know, I loved to do it, and I was obsessed with it.
To become one of the most mesmerizing actors in Hollywood.
She just has that magnetism. And then when you meet her, I mean, she's so down to earth.
And one of its most alluring stars.
At first when I saw her in that Black Widow suit, it was a little distracting, and I was like, wow, are we gonna really be able to do this?
From the very start, Scarlett Johansson played by her own rules.
Scarlett Johansson, 9.
From her early struggle just to get noticed.
Because she had this kind of husky voice, Scarlett was often overlooked.
To her creative battles with high-powered directors.
You have to be on your toes when you're directing her because she's really smart.
And her refusal to play along with the paparazzi.
The whole of having people poke around your personal life and kind of take your private moments. Oh, it feels so awful. I can't imagine what could prepare one for that.
Scarlett Johansson is outspoken, determined, and totally fearless.
I'm an actor who wants to do everything.
By 2005, 20-year-old actress Scarlett Johansson had appeared in 20 films and been nominated for 4 Golden Globes, including one for the bittersweet comedy Lost in Translation. But fame made Scarlett a tabloid target. While the fiercely private actress tried to avoid the media, on August 18, 2005, she found herself on a collision course with the paparazzi.
Scarlett left her home in Hollywood to go to Disneyland with friends, and she realized that she was being trailed.
Photographers followed her into the parking lot.
She ended up trying to get away from them.
Then the wild chase turned ugly.
The next thing you know, she clipped another car.
911.
Hi, we just got into a car accident. Unfortunately, we have a bunch of paparazzi cars also following us.
The car she hit was carrying a mother and her 2 children, so it must have been a very frightening experience for everyone.
Scarlett and the other car pulled over, and of course the paparazzi followed her right where she was.
Then one of the paparazzi started taking photos of the accident scene, so it must have been a very infuriating position for Scarlett.
Luckily, no one was hurt in the fender bender and no charges were filed.
A lot of celebrities would want to sweep this incident under the rug because it could be potentially embarrassing, but that's not how Scarlett works.
The defiant young actress decided to confront the paparazzi head-on.
She joined forces with other celebrities who had had dangerous run-ins with the paparazzi, such as Reese Witherspoon and Nick Lachey, and they wanted to lobby in California to have a law to protect them, along with innocent people on the street getting caught up in the crossfire.
The legislation would provide strict penalties for photographers who are creating potentially dangerous situations.
On September 30th, just weeks after her Disneyland misadventure, Scarlett scored a major victory against the tabloid press.
California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger signed the legislation into a law, and the paparazzi were not too happy about that.
This incident is so typical of Scarlett. She just doesn't accept the Hollywood system as it is. She's gutsy, and she confronts it head-on.
But the New York City-born actress has always fought for what she believes in. The youngest of 4 children, along with twin brother Hunter, Scarlett Johansson was born on November 22nd, 1984.
She's a New Yorker through and through, raised in the West Village, you know, when it was a little bit rough around the edges.
They were a very bohemian family.
She was born into a very artistic and creative family. Her father was an architect, and her mom is like this complete film buff.
Her mother, Melanie, was very much a big part of her life.
She watched her mom's video collection of some of the classic films that her mom had.
Seeing Silence of the Lambs when you're like 8 years old is going to change you a little bit.
Even at a very young age, Scarlett was fantasizing about becoming an actress and even play acting in the house, but she took it a step further and charged everybody $1 to see her.
I think Scarlett was very convinced of her own ability. She's really ambitious, and she was as a kid. I mean, she knew what she wanted to do.
So when a family friend suggested to Melanie that she take her good-looking kids to a TV commercial audition, Scarlett was all for it.
But it wasn't easy going.
They used to go in groups to auditions for TV commercials, and casting directors were more interested in her older brother, Adrian. Scarlett, because she had this kind of husky voice, was often overlooked.
Scarlett Johansson, 9.
Even as a little girl, she has a very deep voice, and you thought, wow, is that real?
Would you forget about the stupid game? Now close it up and put it away.
She had this really husky, throaty type of voice that was kind of more adultish, and it wasn't really right for selling cereal, so she wasn't getting any bites.
Unless the child has a certain sort of strength of ego and a sense of self-determination, I think it can be really demoralizing.
But rejection didn't slow Scarlett down.
She has a very high expectation of herself, and I feel like she doesn't accept defeat.
Rejection made her more resilient, and the fact that she knew she was destined to do this informed a lot of her decisions.
Still in elementary school, Scarlett chose to redirect her talents toward more serious acting.
Scarlett really understands characters. Commercials, even for an 8 or 10-year-old girl, she knew that that wasn't really where she was supposed to be going.
Scarlett's mother did what she could to support and protect her daughter.
Scarlett clearly was driving the train. Scarlett knew that she wanted to act, and Melanie was respecting that wish. There was no denying it.
It became like my passion. You know, I loved to do it, and I was obsessed with it.
Scarlett was so obsessed that Melanie enrolled her in an after-school program at the Lee Strasberg Institute.
Among actors, Lee Strasberg is probably the ultimate brand name as a teacher. He created the Actors Studio. It developed a reputation in the 1950s as the place that people learned to act and feel, to channel their own emotions, to dig deep into their own emotions and put them on display.
Before long, she'd risen from the children's program to young adult classes.
She had a self-possession that people felt she could hold her own with people much older than she.
Growing up in New York, I think that gave her this sort of street-savvy self-assuredness that kids that grow up in a place like that get early on.
In 1993, the 8-year-old auditioned for an off-Broadway play, Sophistry.
Sophistry is a play about the difficulty of knowing the truth in sexual relationships.
It was about a group of college kids, and the allegation was that a professor had molested one of them.
And while her husky voice had been a liability in the world of advertising, at the New Horizons Playhouse, it made Scarlett stand out.
Her voice, for us, was an asset. You're seeing this little child, and you're expecting one sort of voice to come out, and this much more interesting voice comes out.
It was a small part, but it was a great showcase, and she wasn't singing the Good Ship Lollipop. It was a fairly adult play.
The pressure was on. Scarlett would step on an off-Broadway stage for the very first time in a production that included seasoned actors such as Ethan Hawke and Steve Zahn.
For most students, when they're very young, it's fairly easy to be intimidated around other people, particularly well-known people.
She came in at the end of the first act when a college professor who had been accused of molestation by a college student had been fired and was working as a Santa Claus in a shopping mall, and he had a drinking problem. She was a child on Santa's lap, and she's saying, "Something smells, Mommy, something smells," and runs off stage.
She really surprised everybody. Nobody would ever have known that this was her first time out.
She was never late, she knew her lines, she was really on top of everything.
While her bit part went unnoticed by reviewers, she did catch the eye of Hollywood casting directors.
Christopher!
What was happening? What's wrong?
There's bugs in my room.
What?
Bugs!
What kind?
Really bad ones.
The industry had its eye on the 10-year-old actress, and she was about to land her first big break with one of the most bankable directors in Hollywood. By 1993, 8-year-old actress Scarlett Johansson had a minor breakthrough, a small role in an off-Broadway production. But growing up with her mother's extensive movie collection, Scarlett had cultivated a love of film.
Scarlett Johansson, 9.
And in 1994, after countless auditions, she began to pick up film roles.
Come on, North, you gotta stay. Yeah, we really want you. Mommy, where are we going?
It's a surprise.
that really gross guy sent his ear in the mail to his brother and then he killed himself.
They were all small roles in what would have become pretty big movies, but none of them took off. But for Scarlett, she was building up her resume and getting lots of experience.
Scarlett could have really kept pursuing big roles in big Hollywood movies, but she did something different. She concentrated on smaller, independent films.
Then the 11-year-old auditioned for a lead role in the indie film Manny and Lo.
Manny and Lo was about two sisters who ran away from foster homes.
I remember she opened her mouth and had that earthy, deep voice, and I crossed my fingers under the desk, hoping that she could act, because I loved the way she looked and I loved the way she spoke.
But the director, Lisa Kruger, also had her doubts.
I worried that she didn't have the depth for the part. I tried to get her to get heavy with me, and I asked her what was the saddest thing that ever happened to her. And she told me some story about her neighbor's grandmother's cat that died. And she was clearly not all that touched by the story, and she was giggling in parts. And again, I worried that she was, too happy.
But Kruger's worries vanished when Scarlett stepped into character.
I had her do the scene with Alexa Palladino, who played Lo. And she was fantastic, and all of the depth that I could ever want was there in the scene.
The director of Manny and Lo was looking for someone who wasn't just cute, but had a little sense of toughness. And she found that in Scarlett.
Lo could keep from noticing something longer than anybody.
What are you looking at?
Nothing.
Scarlett understood immediately that her relationship with Lo had to feel as if it had lasted for years. And so she would just hang around with Alexa and became actually very bonded with her and even a little protective of her. One time she asked to have a meeting with me to tell me that I was being a little too hard on Alexa. I remember thinking at the time that Scarlett's telling me that I'm being too hard on the older girl.
Her maturity came through on screen as well. After Manny and Lo premiered on July 26, 1996, Scarlett was nominated for a prestigious Independent Spirit Award in the adult category.
She's in there with Frances McDormand and Renee Zellweger.
Though Scarlett lost to Frances McDormand, Manny and Lo kick-started her career, and she found herself in the running for a dream role.
When Scarlett was in 8th grade, she auditioned for Parent Trap, and it went pretty far in the sequence, and she seemed very excited about it.
It's about these twin girls who want to get their parents back together, and Scarlett would be taking on a double role.
But after throwing herself into the audition, Scarlett lost out to another promising starlet.
She ended up losing the role to Lindsay Lohan. This was the role she really wanted, and it was a huge disappointment.
As typically Scarlett would do, didn't say too much other than she didn't get the part. She sort of took it in and sort of learned from it. She seemed more determined than ever that she was going to work harder at the next role she might get.
And the next role that presented itself was huge.
Robert Redford was directing an adaptation of the best-selling novel, The Horse Whisperer, and he had seen Manny and Lo during his Sundance Film Festival and remembered Scarlett's performance.
So he had her come in for an audition.
She had this freshness and this exuberance about her and a sense of humor that helped her, I think, a lot in her relationship with Bob. She was kind of constantly teasing back and forth with him. The power that Scarlett was able to bring, that to me said, oh my God, we really have something here with this kid, and she's gonna make this work way beyond what we thought she could.
She plays a New York girl named Grace, who's maimed in a horse accident that also kills her best friend. Robert Redford's character is a horse whisperer and rancher who cures the horse of its demons and helps Grace heal.
I tried to grab her reins and to get her horse to move out of the way.
Bob worked really carefully with her, discussing the character and what the character was going through and trying to guide her with that.
I think she felt he was very much like a mentor, like a teacher.
It really helped me a lot because he would go through the story and go through the scenes and help me find my place. And it was wonderful.
She would argue with Bob. I mean, he would give her a sense of direction, or they would be talking about a particular scene, and she wasn't afraid at all to speak up to him, and that's a daunting thing, a guy with that kind of legendary reputation.
Robert Redford called her 13 going on 30 after working with her on The Horse Whisperer. You can see it in that movie. She's handling more adult emotions than I think a lot of kids at her age could have handled.
The studio was so impressed that it singled her out in the opening credits.
At the beginning of the film, it said, "Introducing Scarlett Johansson."
A studio wants to be able to claim some ownership of that. They felt we were kind of introducing her to a larger world.
In many ways, it was a sense of arrival for her. A role that really touched hearts.
It ended up making about $185 million, which was a lot of money in 1998. I think a lot of that had to do with Scarlett's performance.
In the wake of The Horse Whisperer, offers poured in, but Johansson did something unexpected. She turned most of them down.
She would have so many scripts all the time. She investigated each of them. She thought carefully about each of them.
This is around the time of American Pie and all the slasher movies like Scream.
Scarlett got the luge with all these offers, but a lot of them were these silly teenage movies. A lot were Girl in Jeopardy. She says, she describes it as girls getting cut up. And she didn't want that.
Scarlett was smart enough to realize and courageous enough to say, you know, I'm in high school. I don't have to support my family. I can wait until roles come along that I really want to do.
You don't want to get stuck doing teen comedies. You don't, want to be the scream queen.
Scarlett really did sacrifice huge paychecks, but she wanted to be on a film set where she could learn something.
She said, well, it's kind of surfacey and it's not particularly interesting and it's not going to make me grow as an actor and I don't see why I would do it.
Over the next 2 years, Scarlett said yes to only the most challenging roles.
The kinds of movies she would do were, there was a Coen Brothers movie, The Man Who Wasn't There, Ghost World, a really cool indie film.
Scarlett really got the indie film sensibility. This is something that she loved. She loved interesting characters.
I thought that was real good.
Yeah, I messed up a little bit on the agitato, but if nobody noticed, then it's okay.
What happened to Seymour?
I can't believe this. He actually scored.
God, how repulsive.
But Scarlett did something unexpected for an actress on the rise. She focused on being a normal teen and enjoying life at the Professional Children's School, a top New York institution for children in entertainment.
The thing that struck me is that she participated fully in the life of the school. She had no sense of being a diva. If they were doing a senior prank day, she would do it. If they were going to tease a teacher about doing something, she would do it.
Scarlett graduated high school in 2002 and had her sights set on college.
In 2002, Scarlett applied to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts.
She had a very good cumulative average. Her comments from her teachers were stunning. The college recommendation was lovely.
That spring, the standout student received word from New York University.
Scarlett was actually rejected.
NYU Tisch at the time was concerned about what they perceived to be a very busy schedule. I think they made a really bad choice.
To go to a prestigious school, get good grades, make multiple movies, and not get into the, school choice that you've always wanted to go to must have been a huge shock.
I think there was certainly a sense of disappointment and a bit of befuddlement on all of our parts because she really was such an extraordinary student.
Rejected by New York University, Scarlett was about to be embraced by a hot new director and claim the role that would transform her career. A big screen actor at age 10, by 19, Scarlett Johansson had worked with some of the most revered filmmakers, from Robert Redford to the Coen brothers. With her career in high gear, Scarlett insisted on completing her education, only to have her dreams dashed when she was rejected by New York University.
It was a shock for Scarlett. She was a good student and she didn't get to the school of her choice, but that didn't stop her. She decided to pick up herself, rededicate her career, and start getting roles more challenging as an actress.
One such role arrived in 2003.
She read the script for a film called Lost in Translation, and it's about this lonely woman living in Tokyo who has this, deep connection with an older man.
She's always interested in different types of characters for women, strong women, that can be quite emotional at the same time.
The director, Sofia Coppola, whose star was also on the rise.
Sofia Coppola is the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola. She'd made one movie, The Virgin Suicides, which was critically acclaimed, and she was looking to make this very autobiographical film about her experience in her marriage and so on. And she remembered seeing Scarlett in the indie film Manny and Lowe.
She loved Scarlett's voice and her presence and really wanted her to play this character, but let's not forget, the character was a young married woman in her 20s, and Scarlett was still a teenager. So Sophia set up a meeting and pretty quickly realized that Scarlett had the maturity and the presence for this role.
It takes a really smart and very wise actor, or someone with an old soul that can play someone that's that much older.
Lost in Translation had a lot of the elements that Scarlett seemed to be looking for in a film. It represented the kind of questioning that you can expect a sensitive, intelligent 19-year-old to be going through. She spoke pretty eloquently about the fact that people at various times in their lives kind of lose track of where they're going, and that's what the film was, and I think that resonated with her.
But no sooner had shooting begun than the actress and her director found themselves at odds.
Sophia envisioned the opening shot of this film to be Charlotte's backside wearing see-through underwear.
Scarlett didn't want to do that scene in those panties.
Scarlett was worried about being exposed in that opening scene, and so she spoke up.
To have that kind of confidence that young, to be able to say to Sofia Coppola, I don't think so. This isn't working for me. She's got balls.
She seems to consider it part of her job to stand up for herself and say, you know, I'm not sure this is the right move here. Can we talk about it instead of just following blindly what her directors say?
To persuade her headstrong star, Coppola took extreme measures.
Sofia Coppola had to put them on and sort of convince her it was okay. It sort of says something about that even those little details, those little angles, don't escape Scarlett.
After seeing the director stage the shot, Scarlett was convinced that Coppola was right.
I think in all the years that I've known Scarlett Johansson, I don't think I've ever seen her intimidated. I think she's been wary, she's been careful, she's been strategic, she's been thoughtful, but she's not a person who's intimidated because I think in many ways she does not step into a room assuming that she's better than anyone. She steps into a room assuming at some level that she can learn from them.
She ultimately did it, and that opening title sequence has gone down in history.
You didn't feel she was just an object. The flesh was gorgeous, but she was someone who inhabited the flesh.
Lost in Translation wasn't just an indie sensation, it was a surprise hit. Produced on a modest $4 million budget, it made almost $120 million worldwide and earned Scarlett her very first Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress.
Lost in Translation is one of the crucial indie to mainstream hits of the last 20 years. It got Sofia Coppola a Best Screenplay Oscar. It launched Scarlett's career.
Does it get easier?
No. Yes.
But with success came unwelcome attention from the Hollywood press.
Years ago, I was interviewing her for one of her films, and she was commenting that her newfound fame at the time, she's about 21, prevented her from going out the way she used to. She said she has to put on a hoodie and sunglasses.
When she blew up, it literally became like, anywhere she went, it was just absolute mayhem.
She said that black cars and SUVs were parked outside of her house full of paparazzi. She was so upset she called the police, but there was nothing they could do.
But Johansson was determined to keep the press out of her private life.
After her incident, she helped pass the law against paparazzi. Once when she was being hounded, she scribbled on a piece of paper, "I am being harassed," and held it up.
It was rare to find a shot of Scarlett where she wasn't hiding her face or trying to obscure her identity.
Even when she granted an interview, Scarlett revealed very little about her private life.
I kept asking her all these questions because that's my job. And Scarlett, at one point, grabbed the notebook from me and started asking me questions about my personal life, about my sex life. And she's like, "How does this feel?" And I was like, "Well, this has never happened to me before."
She really has been adamant throughout her career that her personal life should stay personal. It's private. She'll talk about her work. She'll show you what's on screen, and that's it.
The media was obsessed, and so were moviegoers. It wasn't long before another industry was eager to capitalize on Scarlett Johansson's fame. Over the course of 13 films, Scarlett Johansson had earned a reputation as an opinionated young actress. Having turned the indie film Lost in Translation into a big hit, the 19-year-old seemed unstoppable.
Lost in Translation is the movie that made her into sort of a sex symbol.
She had grown into this gorgeous young woman in this kind of va-va-voom character.
After Lost in Translation, she had many roles that came to her where she really oozed sensuality.
So why are you still talking?
What are you doing today?
Oh, I thought I'd go down to the quarter, look for a job. I haven't tried there yet.
Girl with a Pearl Earring and Love Song for Bobby Long earned her 2 more Golden Globe nominations.
As a celebrated actress, the media started painting her as this kind of a sex symbol. With her retro hairstyle and her old Hollywood figure, she was kind of being dubbed the new Marilyn Monroe.
A lot of people commented on her Marilyn Monroe-like curves, her 1950s look. And in Hollywood at that time, that was pretty rare. Just tried to shy away from that, and she embraced it.
She's not skin and bone. She does have voluptuousness, which is something that, frankly, we don't see a lot of these days.
So it was no surprise when some of the fashion world's most prestigious names hired her to represent their brands.
You couldn't find any bigger names in fashion than Calvin Klein, Louis Vuitton, and Dolce & Gabbana. They all wanted to work with her. It helped solidify her as a glamorous, sexy Hollywood star. She became the ultimate sex symbol.
One of the things that was clear is the advertisements were done in a very sort of retro look. Very voluptuous, full-bodied, the whole sort of image that in some ways was outside of this sort of realm at the time about how people were presenting women.
She's drop dead sexy and you want to keep looking at her, but you also want to know what's going on behind her eyes, what she's thinking. You want to keep on watching her.
She just has that magnetism. And then when you meet her, she's so down to earth, it's actually kind of crazy.
She's always been sexy and beautiful, but it's kind of weird to suddenly see her in this whole polished light, and it was wonderful. And she looks amazing, but she was very kind of, humble about it.
I think she's lucky that she knew she was a great actress long before she became a bombshell. I'm not surprised that Scarlett would own her curves because, Scarlett's going to own every part of her.
While fashion designers fawned over her, Scarlett caught the eye of her filmmaking idol.
Scarlett received the script from Woody Allen for Match Point, and actually he'd attach a personal note to it saying how much he wanted her to be in the film.
I think it was definitely a dream for her to work with Woody Allen. We watched Woody Allen movies when we were shooting The Perfect Score.
She had grown up on his movies. She's a New Yorker. He's kind of the bard of New York City, and this was a really exciting opportunity for her.
But there was a catch.
Allen had originally cast Kate Winslet in the role, but she dropped out at the last minute in order to spend more time with her kids.
As a new addition to the cast, Scarlett would have just 1 week to prepare for the role. And her first day on set, Johansson had to use her powers of seduction for one nuanced and naughty scene.
You only get a week to prepare, and what's your first scene? You're shooting with Jonathan Rhys-Meyer, who's this, super dashing, good-looking guy who you probably have never even met before.
For her to be able to do that sort of says something about her fearlessness.
Men always seem to wonder. They think I'd be something very special.
And are you? It is very much a testament to her talent that she can just walk into a role. It doesn't surprise me that, in a week she was able to make this profound, performance.
I think that she really had a great sense of humor about experiences. She put them in a broad context. She would joke with her friends about it. There would be moments of a lack of credibility, like, can you believe I had to do this? But at the same time, she never didn't take the challenge head on and sort of just go into it.
It was a great performance. She had this tough side to her and this vulnerable side to her, and her sensuality on screen was undeniable.
Her introductory scene, her first shot, was filmed many, many times. Woody Allen has spoken about how he had 3 different dresses that he filmed her in because he wanted to get that shot of her perfectly where she lights the cigarette and she's standing at the ping pong table, just so you instantly fall in love with her and you have that Marilyn Monroe moment.
Who's my next victim? You?
I haven't played table tennis in quite a while.
Would you like to play for £1,000 a game?
She was fascinating to watch in Match Point. You wanted to protect and kill her character all at the same time.
And her celebrated director was also impressed.
Being that they were both from New York, they really did get each other's sensibilities.
Match Point was a career changer for Allen, thanks to his stunning young star.
His last big box office hit was 1986's Hannah and Her Sisters. Suddenly, Match Point comes around, and she becomes the face of his comeback. She really re-energizes Woody Allen.
Match Point was a huge success, his biggest success in years. It made $85 million. and earned her her 4th Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress.
Yet again, Scarlett had turned an independent film into a box office smash. But her next outing would take her in a surprising new direction. By age 21, Scarlett Johansson was known for turning independent films into huge hits. Her performance helped transform Lost in Translation into a $120 million smash. Her work with Woody Allen produced his first blockbuster in decades. And while she'd found success in smaller films, Scarlett wasn't about to be pigeonholed.
Of course, as any creative person, you don't want to be stuck in a box. You know, somebody saying, oh, you only fit in the young, passive ingenue category.
She obviously wanted to break out of that box a little bit, and one way to do that was just to do a really big action movie, and there's nobody bigger, in a sense, than Michael Bay.
In the summer of 2004, Scarlett was offered the lead role in Bay's newest sci-fi flick, The Island.
The script was about a future world where rich people clone themselves to get new body parts. In the film, Scarlett was one of the clones who revolts.
Everything about the story was fantastic. I wanted to be a part of it.
For Michael Bay to cast Scarlett Johansson as the lead in a $125 million action movie is a pretty big leap of faith. This was an actress who had mainly been in smaller films, but he saw something in her.
No one is touching me.
But Scarlett wasn't only tough on camera. The outspoken actress locked horns, and Michael Bay was not to be trifled with.
Michael Bay is not known for running away from a fight. He's kind of a militant guy. He's pretty feisty himself.
She wasn't intimidated by him. She actually had it out with him over a wardrobe decision, which she felt was all wrong.
There's a scene where Scarlett has to wake up in the morning.
Michael said, I want you to wear this sexy black bra in this scene. Scarlett said, I don't think that makes sense for my character.
You have to be on your toes when you're directing her because she's really smart, and you don't want to be caught out saying a bunch of BS.
Scarlett explained that women just don't wear bras when they go to sleep. It's just not normal.
She was willing to sort of sacrifice a little bit of modesty for a little bit of more reality. Michael Bay had to sort of fight her and say, this is a PG-13 movie, you can't be topless, and she said, well, let's pull up the covers.
To argue with Michael Bay on the set of an $125 million movie about your wardrobe, it was risky.
We're the director of so many of these huge blockbuster movies, and you're this 20-something-year-old, you know, who's she?
In the end, Bay prevailed because he's the kind of director who gets his way. But if you look at the shot and the way it's edited, you can barely see the bra.
She's a strong drink, Scarlett. She's got a very strong core and center, and that's what allows her to hold her own against anyone, because she has that presence that comes from knowing who you are.
When The Island was released on July 22, 2005, critics mocked it. The $125 million picture took in a meager $36 million.
In the end, The Island did not succeed, but people gave Scarlett a lot of credit for stretching beyond her normal boundaries and really being one of the few watchable things about it.
After pushing her boundaries in a big-budget action movie, Scarlett decided to take her talent in another surprising direction.
In 2006, Scarlett contributed a cover of George Gershwin's Summertime to a compilation that Rhino Records put out.
They liked it so much, they approached her to do a whole album of standards.
She thought about it and said, you know what, I'd rather do a whole album of songs by somebody that I'm really passionate about. And that artist was Tom Waits.
Tom Waits is one of our greatest singer-songwriters. He is extremely unusual. His voice, his subject matter, this was like something I was like, oh my God, that's impossible. I thought it was incredibly risky, and I think that she kind of thrives in that scenario. We were up against the odds. He's probably the most difficult person to cover.
This time, the risk did not pay off. The album, Anywhere I Lay My Head, sold only a few thousand copies and garnered scathing reviews.
Well, just like you might expect, you know, Scarlett's vocal styling was hushed, husky, kind of like sexy. You know, she didn't have the strongest voice in the world.
We kind of knew going into it that a lot of people wouldn't give it a chance just because you don't want to give an actress who already has so many opportunities another opportunity.
The album obviously had some negative press, and the thing about Scarlett that is really fascinating is that this is a person who sets a goal for herself, works really hard on it, perceives that everyone can do better if they work harder and harder at it.
And that's exactly what Scarlett did.
You know, a lot of actors have had their hand in music and they failed and they just threw in the towel. But Scarlett Johansson was not gonna let bad reviews stop her.
She paired up with old friend musician Pete Yorn on a collection of new songs. The result was Breakup, an album of all original material.
Critics thought her album of duets was much better. Her voice seemed to mix seamlessly in with Pete Yorn's.
While her collaboration with Pete Yorn had taken Scarlett down a new creative path, her fellow actor was of a more personal nature. In the spring of 2007, Johansson started dating Ryan Reynolds, 8 years her senior.
Ryan Reynolds had recently ended an engagement with the singer Alanis Morissette, and when he and Scarlett got together, there was a huge amount of interest. They were sort of chased around by the paparazzi.
All I can say is, look at Scarlett, look at Ryan. I mean, hello. Anything more to say?
Scarlett was just dead serious about not playing the game. You know, reporters couldn't even get out of her where they met. She just would not describe really anything about their relationship.
You guys are worms.
Scarlett is very good at keeping things personal that are personal and things that are important to her. Not only does she speak out about, but also she knows when not to.
The whole shock and horror of having people poke around your personal life and kind of take your private moments. Oh, it feels so awful. I can't imagine what could prepare one for that.
While she kept the media at arm's length, Scarlett's next move would find her at odds with fellow actors. By 2008, 24-year-old Scarlett Johansson had tackled everything from period pieces
But I don't want to go to court, nor does my husband.
to contemporary comedies.
I don't do this.
You don't do what? You don't help struggling singers?
Low in sugar isn't the same as sugar-free.
Grover, just eat it.
She reunited with film legend Woody Allen for the successful romantic dramedy Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
I'm a big girl, okay? If I want to sleep with him, I will. If not, I won't.
And all the while, the paparazzi was in hot pursuit.
When she was shooting Barcelona, I was there and I was like, hey, we should go out. And she said, oh, it's ridiculous. Like every time I leave the set, it's just a mess, like paparazzi and all this garbage. So I rented a Vespa and I got a big, giant black Darth Vader helmet. All the paparazzi was outside, but they were not expecting her to come in this really ugly helmet on this bike, and we just rode right past them, and it was the first time that she'd actually gotten out into Barcelona to see the city without any, jibber jabber.
Johansson also took pains to guard her romance with fellow actor Ryan Reynolds, especially as it grew more serious.
She and Ryan Reynolds started dating in the spring of 2007, and after a year, they got engaged. It was a pretty short engagement, just about 3 months.
They married in Reynolds' hometown, Vancouver, on September 27th, 2008.
That everyone didn't know about Scarlett and Ryan's wedding. There aren't pictures of the event like these big celebrity weddings. That is a masterful achievement.
But the tabloids were relentless. If they couldn't penetrate her personal life, they'd find another angle.
In 2010, the tabloid press said that she had gone on this really strict diet to lose a lot of weight for Iron Man 2.
Rumors were that she was on some kind of crazy crash diet, that she was wasting away. This really did not sit well with Scarlett. Her reaction was that what you're really doing is sending a message to kids saying, if you want to be like Scarlett Johansson, you have to go on crazy diets.
Unwilling to let the press have the final word, Scarlett took action.
She went to the Huffington Post and she wrote a kind of very pungent essay calling to task the people who were spreading these things about her.
Then Scarlett let her fit new body do the talking, on screen.
When Iron Man 2 opened, she was hardly a shadow of her former self.
It was like the most jock I'd ever seen her.
When you wear a catsuit, you do go, oh my, is it all in one place?
At first, when I saw her in that Black Widow suit, it was a little distracting, and I was like, wow, are we gonna really be able to do this?
Iron Iron Man 2 was a big hit. It made $310 million.
Scarlett had proven that she was blockbuster material, but rather than return to the big screen, she went back to her roots, live theater.
She could have easily parlayed Iron Man into a string of action movies making a hefty fortune, but Scarlett always follows her own heart.
In 2009, she was asked to star in a revival of an American theater masterpiece.
View from the Bridge is a 1956 play by the great Arthur Miller, one of America's greatest playwrights. The couple, Liev Schreiber and Jessica Hecht, raised their niece as their daughter.
Scarlett was offered the role of Catherine, the 17-year-old niece that Liev Schreiber becomes sexually obsessed with.
It was a tempting offer, a classic role on Broadway, but Scarlett had reservations.
Initially, really didn't feel this was the right play for me. Just felt that I was too old and felt that I was kind of past that sort of time.
But after a period of soul searching, the actress agreed to take the part.
I gradually realized that because I could relate to that, I think because I had some perspective on that time of my life as a 17-year-old woman, as we're now calling her, a girl woman. Yes, I thought that maybe I had and did indeed have something to contribute.
But soon after accepting the part, the Hollywood star found herself at odds with her peers on Broadway.
Broadway producers have developed this sort of addiction on Hollywood actors as a way to get people to buy tickets. It's something that is understandably very frustrating for actors who spent their whole careers on the stage. And so when Scarlett came in to do A View from the Bridge, she found herself sort of in the middle of this controversy.
Scarlett addressed this new controversy head-on, giving an in-depth interview to the Broadway press.
For an A-list star or any Hollywood star getting a role purely based on their name, that's obscene. And Scarlett said as much.
It sort of gave her goodwill that she might not have had otherwise. But I also think she believed it. She's fairly careful when she makes her public statements, but she's also sincere.
But on January 24th, 2010, Scarlett would have to prove she had what it took to command a Broadway stage.
We were all so worried that Scarlett was going to be nervous. But she was unflappable. It was the weirdest thing in the world. She was Miss Cool.
I've seen many productions of that play. She was the best in that role I've ever seen.
Look, I'm not telling you what to do.
No, you can tell me, B. Gee, I'm all mixed up. See, you look so sad now and it hurts me.
Scarlett kind of proved the critics wrong in the end. She was not only nominated, but won the Tony for Best Featured Actress in a Play.
To be welcomed into the community the way that I was, it was just, I have to say, incredibly touching, and I feel unbelievably fortunate for that.
At the Tony Awards after party, Scarlett couldn't conceal her pride.
She was on top of the world. She was with her friends, and Brian was there. You could see how proud Brian was. No one was more aware of how much work had gone into this. That award was, I'm sure, a great moment.
But it would be one of the couple's last moments together in public.
In December 2010, Ryan Reynolds and Scarlett got divorced as quietly as they got married. They didn't talk about it in the press. They had been together almost 3 years.
You know, it was difficult, but what I loved about her is that she really kept her own. She really kept her cool.
She certainly shared that part of her life with people she was close to. But everybody who knew her knew that that was off limits because she really wanted to be protective of her emotions and his emotions.
Despite constant intrusions from the Hollywood media, Scarlett has managed to focus on her career. After almost 2 decades in acting, she continues to take on challenging roles and follow her own path.
She's a very special actress. I don't know anyone who doesn't want to work with Scarlett.
I really can see in the choices that she's making that she's going to have a really interesting career because A, she's incredibly smart, and B, she's not going to give that much of a damn about what other people think.
Anything she wants to do, she will do in a thoughtful, strategic, and probably kick-ass way.
She's a person who's going to touch hearts and touch souls in her performances.
What drives her is new challenges, new roles, but doing them in a way that feels true to her.
I'm an actor who wants to do everything.